A warm welcome to everyone joining us from all over the world. We're here at the Slovakiaring for stage number 2 of TCR European Endurance and the GTC Endurance Challenge, the second round of their respective 2026 championships. We've had plenty of fun this weekend so far. We had an incredibly exciting stage 1 on Saturday. We are ready for more of the same here on Sunday, and we are already on the starting grid. We see the BMW of Casas Motorsport that is set to start from pole position in the GTC Pro Am standings. It will be the very car at the top of the pile as we will race towards turn number 1. We're now seeing instead one of the GTC AM class cars, the Audi, and now back on the front row of the grid with Koraj Kamiloglu, who is getting ready to step in the car for the start for Auto Orlando Sport in his Porsche. We also saw Davide Nardilli, the BMW driver, wishing good luck to his main rivals, the two cars fighting for the GTC Pro-Am class win. The two cars were separated by just 2.7 seconds in stage number 1, which was won by Davide Nardilli and Sebastian Gavazza in the Casas Motorsport BMW. And speaking of Casas Motorsport, here we see Paolo Palanti and Cristian Carinci, the TCR DSG leaders for Casas Motorsport after stage number 1. A little reminder for those who are just joining us today, the final race results are created by the sum of the times of the two stages that we have every single weekend. So stage number 1 was yesterday, today is stage number 2, another 55 minutes of racing, which will give us the names of the winners from round number 2. Of course, points are awarded for the final race result, as well as both stages in each weekend and qualifying as well. Meanwhile, we say hi to our reigning champions in TCR European Endurance, Eric Scalvini, at the wheel of the Cupra Leon VZ of Wimmerweg Motorsport. He will then leave the car to the 3-time TCR Italy champion, Salvatore Tavano, who is right there giving the last few tips to his teammate, with who he became the 2025 TCR overall champion last season. And meanwhile, we are with Brothers in Arms on the starting grid, a team that has excelled in the opening round in Vallelunga, as they have taken a spectacular TCR DSG 1-2 on the Roman racetrack. Fortunately, yesterday, issues hit the championship leading car of Argenti and Serratore, but they were quickly back on track, which means, of course, that they will be among the favorites for this second stage. Meanwhile, we are with Wimmerweg Motorsport and the number 91 Porsche in the GTC Endurance Challenge grid, driven by Jakob Trost at the start. They were second yesterday in the GTC AM standings. Now back with TCR European Endurance and the number 8 Cupra of Dario Caso and newcomer Michele Locatelli. We talked with the Italian driver yesterday. He was very excited to be on the starting grid of such an important continental championship. He was very quick right from the beginning. A couple of very small mistakes throughout his stint, but a very promising performance from him. As we can see now, the starting grid from turn number 1, it is a very long way towards the very first corner. And speaking of newcomers, we welcome Racing Animals by GT Sports on our starting grid, car number 5, driven by the two Ukrainians, Ivan Yeremenko and Serhiy Volubyev. The two Ukrainians finished on the GTC AM podium in stage number 1, taking home crucial points in their first ever race. We will be expecting them to be quite quick today as well. Yesterday they were leading things in the first half of stage number 1 in the GTC AM standings. Standings that were topped by the Alpine of Emilio Damante and Edoardo Maccari, which will start from the second row of the grid and in the lead of the GTC AM class. Speaking of leaders, car number 3, Berk Karpaklioglu and Umut Göktaş, the TCR European Endurance Gen 1 championship leaders and race leaders after the first stage. And now as the grid starts to get cleared. We are inching closer to the start of stage number 2. Back with Brothers in Arms, the team that has taken home the winning spoils in Vallelunga in the TCR DSG standings with Argenti and Serratore. However, they will be having to fight back from the issues that they faced yesterday. Not the best of starts for their weekend, of course, as stage number 1 saw them finish 4th in the TCR DSG standings. A TCR DSG category that was led by Palanti and Carinci, as we said, ahead of Daido Caso and Michele Locatelli, who finished in 2nd position, just 13 seconds behind. We will, of course, update you with the Stage 2 standings as well as the overall standings from this race, summing the times of stages 1 and 2. Meanwhile, we have a look at the highlights from stage number 1. It was a very interesting first stage of the weekend. We saw plenty of fights, especially at the start, with the BMW of Nardilli and Gavazza fighting hard against the Porsche of Auto Orlando Sport, with Adriano Visdomini and Corey Camiloglu at the wheel. There were battles also in the TCR sequential class, with Kuckendorfer and Klug making their debut for Vimevec Motorsport in the white and orange Cupra in the sequential class. The issues that we talked about before for Argenti and Serratore throughout stage number 1. Here a main look at the Alpine that eventually won the first stage. Then the brilliant fight between the Porsche and the BMW up top. The two were separated by just a couple of seconds before the pit window opened. A pit window that ultimately favored the BMW. This instead the fight with the two Lemma Racing Mercedes. Lemma Racing being the championship leading crew with Antonucci and Mancinelli after a GTC AM win in Vallelunga. Fortunately, again, not the easiest time for the Brothers in Arms entries yesterday. Was much better, on the other hand, for the Porsche of Jakob Trost and Hans-Peter Eder, who fought long and hard to take 2nd position in the GTC AM standings. Here the overtake on one of the GTC cars, and this the checkered flag with the BMW of Nardilli and Gavazza taking the stage 1 win as well as the race lead. We're back now with live images as the safety car is inspecting the track during the formation lap. And now we also get the chance to look at the starting grid for the race. Nardilli and Gavazza starting on the front row together with Visdomini and Camiloglu, the two being separated by just 2.7 seconds. Scalvini and Tavano start in 3rd, but crucially in the lead of the TCR sequential class, ahead of Damante Maccari, with Lisi and Berton and Trost and Eder in the 3rd row. Cifci and Dalokai in 7th, ahead of Kuckendorfer and Klug, and then Yeremenko, Volubuyev and Antonucci Mancinelli. On the 5th row of the grid, we have 17 cars in total are on track. Cornelio Olkutska starts in 11th alongside Kalpa Klugler and Göktash. Palanti and Carinci with Caso and Locatelli on the 7th row. Pezza Verrocchio and Bastos Ibrahim on the 8th row of the grid. And then Serratore and Argenti round out the starting grid for stage number 2, with the grid ready to start on the green flag conditions. Of course, the GTC Pro-Am standings will be our prime focus, given that the two cars starting on the front row of the grid are from that class, and they're only separated by 2.7 seconds after stage number 1, meaning that virtually whoever takes the class win in stage number 2 will take the overall race win as well. The two pairs were evenly matched throughout the opening stage, basically having the same pace throughout both stints, which means that not even driver changes could potentially influence that fight, which instead happened in the GTC AM standings, as Damante and Maccari were by far the quickest pair in the GTC AM class. But we are getting ready to start stage number 2. The track is incredibly hot this morning, almost 40 degrees Celsius, the track temperature. It was way below 30 degrees yesterday, which means that drivers will have a much tougher time with tires. Of course, this is a high degradation track for tires, so we'll see how the different drivers will respond to that in just a few minutes time, as the cars now make their way towards the penultimate corner of the racetrack. We're getting ready for the green flag to be waved, and once the 5 red lights will go out, we'll be ready to witness the start of stage number 2. Here are all the cars from TCR European Endurance and the GTC Endurance Challenge Championships getting ready to start stage 2 here at the Slovakiaring. Lights turn green and we are officially underway towards turn number 1. It's a long way up until the very first corner. Who will be stepping up on top at the very first turn? It will be the BMW of Nardilli and Gavazza taking the lead, even though the Porsche of Isdomini and Camiloglu seemed to have the upper hand towards turn number 1. Gavazza was quick to establish his dominance. Meanwhile, there's also the Cupra of Salvatore Tavano and Eric Scalvini with the latter behind the wheel, who is currently fighting for some track position. Behind, we have the Alpine in the lead of the GTC AM class with Edoardo Maccari. Look at the gaggle of cars coming towards third place, and up the inside goes Pedro Ibrahim on the Aston Martin from Gino Motorsport. That is a very opportunistic move. Very well done from Pedro, who now moves up a couple of places. Meanwhile, Koray Camiloglu has kept second position in the GTC Pro-Am standings, whereas the BF Motorsport Audi in the TCR sequential class seems to be very close to the back of the leading number 1 Cupra of Eric Scalvini. Change of position in the meantime in the GTC AM standings between the two Lemma Racing Mercedes. The same goes for Pedro Ibrahim, who moves up the inside of what seems to be the Mercedes of Cornelio Kutzka, who is currently fighting hard to find a spot on the GTC AM podium. Will be her first one if that were to happen today. Ibrahim goes up the inside. It isn't a change for position, however, given that the two are in different classes. Pedro Ibrahim, of course, being a pro driver, is part of the Pro-Am class together with Thiago Pinto Bastos, who unfortunately suffered a puncture yesterday in the first few stages of stage number 1, which meant that the two Aston Martin drivers were out of the fight for the lead. Our cars now come towards the very final couple of corners. Fights going on throughout the field, especially in TCR European Endurance, the sequential class being very much at the center of the attention. Meanwhile, Pedro Ibrahim continues his comeback as he moves up the inside of Antonucci and Mancinelli, as he takes the position, though of course they are part of two different categories, so he won't be too fussed about that. The cars now finding their own rhythm and their own pace as they move closer and closer to the second sector for the second time today. Nardilli and Gavazza with a 1.1 second gap over Visdomin and Camiloglu. The Turk is currently behind the wheel of the Auto Orlando Porsche with the number 33 entry so far holding on to second position. Eric Scalvini in the meantime in the lead of the TCR sequential standings. Up the inside now goes Pedro Ibrahim once more. He is trying to clear all the GTC AM entries. Behind him, Antonucci and Mancinelli try to take advantage of that as they dive up the inside of Jakob Trost to take what looks to be second position in the GTC AM standings away from the Porsche, which is exactly where they finished before. The Audi of Racing Animals is losing a bit of positions as Yeremenko seems to be struggling a bit. We saw the same happen yesterday, though we expect him to be much quicker in the second half of the stage with Serhii Volobuyev, as he was the fastest GTC AM driver in the opening few laps of stage number 1. Let's see if Ibrahim will dive up the inside of Edoardo Maccari in turn number 13. The two almost go side by side on the final corner. You can see the difference in size between the two cars as well, with the Aston Martin being much more present on a racetrack compared to the very small and nimble Alpine that has worked wonderfully this weekend so far, staying in the lead of the GTC AM standings. The two now go towards the opening corner of the circuit in the same positions as they were before. Meanwhile, there's been another change in the fight for second position in the GTC AM class, with the Porsche of Wimmerwerk Motorsport taking over. But now the Mercedes from Lemma Racing fighting back, as Antonucci and Mancinelli want that second position. Meanwhile, issues for Tudor Motorsport, as their TCR DSG entry number 53 has some issues on the front end. Good old duct tape to fix the issue, but unfortunately this unplanned pit stop will not work in their favor. They were third in the TCR DSG standings with Davide Pezza and Daniele Verrocchio. Meanwhile, the Aston Martin of Pedro Ibrahim has overtaken the Alpine of Edoardo Maccari, taking the position, though of course it is not an overtake for an actual position in the standings, given that they are part of two different classes, though Pedro Ibrahim now moves closer and closer to having some clean air. He will try to do the same with Alessandro Berton at the wheel of the BF Motorsport sequential Audi, with the RS3 currently holding second position behind Eric Scalvini in the Cupra, still in the lead of the TCR European Endurance sequential standings. So you can see the beautiful drone shot giving us a chance to see how the cars are spread out throughout this first section of the race. Up the inside goes Pedro Ibrahim, a little lockup from the BF Motorsport Audi that has to give way to other GTC cars as well. Bit of issues for Berton in this section of the race, struggling a bit with performance. Meanwhile, the Porsche looks to go up the inside of Pedro Ibrahim, and that is Jakob Trost in the Wimmerwerk Motorsport Porsche Cayman. Again, not an overtake for a position in their respective classes, but it's a very nice fight to see nonetheless, as of course Jakob Trost is trying to keep the GTC AM lead and extend it if possible in these first few stages. We've seen him being the anchor of this team in stage number 1. Hans-Peter Eder, the very experienced driver that has stayed with Wimmerwerk Motorsport for quite some time, will come in the second half. There was a bit of argy-bargy, a bit of contact from the two cars as Pedro Ibrahim muscles his way in front and now moves into a prime position to have some clean air. His next car will be the TCR sequential leaders of Eric Scalvini and Salvatore Tavano. Meanwhile, up front, Nardilli and Gavazza have a good gap, a 1.3 second lead over Visdomin and Camiloglu, but the fight is still going on for the lead of the GTC AM standings. This is Antonucci and Mancinelli trying their best to overtake Jakob Trost in the Porsche Cayman from Wimmerwerk Motorsport. That is, of course, their prime target at the moment. Antonucci and Mancinelli are the championship leaders following their double stage win, as well as, of course, the race win in Vallelunga in the GTC AM class. They were exceptional strategy-wise in Italy, but right now they're being attacked from the quick Alpine behind them, the race leaders so far, after taking home the winning spoils in stage 1. That is Edoardo Maccari fighting for second place in the stage. He has, after stage 1, a 7.7 second lead over Trosten Eder. But should he stay close to the Porsche in the second half, they will have plenty of time to attack in the second half of the stage. Meanwhile, the Alpine tries to go around the outside, but that wasn't to be for the yellow car. Meanwhile, up the inside towards turn number 2, the good old switchback for the Alpine has worked wonderfully as Emilio Damante and Edoardo Maccari move into second position in the GTC AM standings, just in front of Lema Racing with Cristian Mancinelli and his teammate aboard car number 39, Alberto Antonucci. Very action-packed first 10 minutes of stage number 2. Let's also give a quick rundown of what is happening in each class. Starting off from the GTC Endurance Challenge, Sebastian Gavazza out front still leads with a 1.9 second gap over Koray Camiloglu. The two evenly matched throughout not just these 10 minutes but also the entirety of stage number 1. In GTC AM, it is Jakob Trost in the lead so far, with Emilio Damante and Edoardo Maccari in car number 38 in second position, here chased by the cameras together with third place in the GTC AM standings, belonging to the Lema Racing Mercedes of Antonucci and Mancinelli. Switching over to TCR European Endurance, Eric Scalvini and Salvatore Tavano are currently in the lead, which is so great to see after they were forced to retire in Vallelunga. They have a good gap over Lisi and Berton in second position. They are car number 78. And then in the TCR DSG standings so far, we have Serratore and Argenti keeping the lead of the stage, ahead of the brothers-in-arms teammates Caso Locatelli, and then race leaders after stage 1, Paolo Palanti and Cristian Carinci, with the latter behind the wheel. Meanwhile, Pedro Ibrahim has caught to the back of Eric Scalvini. Naturally, Ibrahim is one of the fastest drivers, not just in this championship, but in the entire GT4 sphere of motorsport, and he moves up the inside of Salvatore Scavano and Eric Scalvini. Of course, Scalvini knows that this isn't the fight he is up for, and therefore he gives way to the Aston Martin that is now inching closer to the top 2 of the GTC Pro-Am. The next 2 cars will in fact be for position finally for Pedro Ibrahim, who had a phenomenal comeback from second to last on the grid, all the way up to third place. Naturally, of course, his car was sensationally quick yesterday as well, though an unfortunate puncture came in the way of them. Meanwhile, there's some fighting going on in the TCR European Endurance grid. That is 2 different classes, one against the other. The red Audi is part of the Gen 1 standings. The other 2, the black brothers-in-arms Cupras, are fighting for the lead in the TCR DSG standings, reserved for those cars with a DSG gearbox. As so far, championship leaders Serratore and Argenti are in the lead, though of course they trail by a couple of laps after a troublesome first stage. Therefore, it will be very hard for them to fight for the overall race result win in the TCR DSG class. Meanwhile, we have behind them Dario Caso at the wheel of the number 8 Cupra for Brothers in Arms. They were second in stage number 2. They were very close to the leaders of Palanti and Carinci, just 13 seconds behind. So far, car number 11 is managing the situation in third place in the TCR DSG class, but crucially still in the lead in the overall race results. We're approaching the end of the first 15 minutes of racing, and these 3 teams have the same pace. And right there up the hill you could see Cristian Carinci in the number 11 Casal Motorsport Audi still going on strong, as Serratore and Argenti are basically holding down the fort in that class. as Berk Karpakloglu and Umut Göktaş can't seem to get past in the Gen 1 Audi. They are the championship leaders as well as the race leaders, of course, in that class. As now you can see Dario Caso moving to the inside to protect the track position. He is, of course, trying to lose as little time as possible in the fight against his teammate. That is Dario Caso in second position in the TCR TSG standings. Meanwhile, up top, we still have Gavazza and Camiloglu separated by 2.6 seconds. Whereas now you can see the fight for the TCR European Endurance sequential class. Seeing Eric Scalvini with a healthy gap over Lisi and Berton. The same cannot be said in the GTC AM class, however, as Edoardo Macari has caught to the back of Jakob Trost, who has been stuck behind teammate Eric Scalvini for a couple of laps. Of course, both of them racing for Vimevec Motorsport, the Austrian outfit who has taken TCR European Endurance by storm last year, winning the overall DSG and teams crowns. One of the few teams, together with Tourer Motorsport, who's repping the Alpine behind, who are racing in both TCR European Endurance and GTC Endurance Challenge, as now the Porsche moves in front of the Cupra, gaining vital ground over the Alpine of Edoardo Macari. However, the latter knows that he just needs to stay focused and close to the Porsche. The Alpine have, at least from what we saw from stage number 1, two evenly matched drivers, whereas in the Porsche it is Jakob Trost, the one who is at the wheel right now, who seems to be the fastest out of the two drivers in the number 91 crew. Therefore, this is the moment where they need to make some inroads, whereas on the other hand, the Alpine will be quite evenly matched throughout. Back with the TCR DSG fight at the top of the standings. The two brothers in arms Cupras working very well together, as once again Argento and Serratore defend the track position over the Gen 1 entry of Karpakloglu and Göktaş. We're seeing right now the difference in pace between the two classes that are, however, quite evenly matched, I have to say, especially in this first part of stage number 2. And that is very nice to see, especially for brothers in arms after their issues in stage number 1 with the car that is currently leading this particular stage. Of course, Dario Caso keeping them honest with just a second on from the other cars, and in the meantime Christian Carinci is using this to get closer lap after lap after lap. He has cut the gap from 3.9 seconds all the way down to 1.7 seconds in the last couple of laps, which means that car number 11 is consolidating their top 3 spot in the TCR DSG standings, as well as going on the attack to try and secure a potential stage 2 win. They were the ones who took the victory in the opening stage of this weekend, which means that they are the prime candidates to take the overall win as well. Now we, of course, highly sought after they finished on the podium in stage number 1 for the opening round in Vallelunga, and they are definitely looking to become one of the prime candidates for the title as well. That is, of course, should they be able to find consistency throughout the entire class, entire season. Meanwhile, we saw the attack from Dario Caso on Göktaş and Karpakloglu. And speaking of Camiloglu, we are up with the cameras in the fight for second position in the GTC Pro Am standings, because Pedro Ibrahim has been on an absolute tear so far, and he has now caught to the back of second position and now up the inside into turn 10, making the move stick, and the Brazilian has moved up the order into second position. Great overtake from Pedro Ibrahim, who has now moved into second in the GTC Pro Am class. He is using every single bit of track time to his advantage to try and gain as many positions as possible. And he has done a stellar job. He was starting from the second to last row of the grid, and he is now up into second position and inching closer to Sebastian Gavazza, who on the other hand has looked mighty quick in this second stage, building a good gap over Koray Kamiloglu. He will then have to fight hard during the pit stop window, which yesterday went in favor of the BMW from Casas Motorsport, as they emerged in front of the Porsche despite being the trailing car before the opening of the mandatory pit stop window, which, by the way, will be approaching quite soon, as the cars are getting ready to pit for the first and hopefully for them only time this weekend. As we now see what could potentially become a fight for second position in TCR sequential class, though Cornelio Kutzka wants to have nothing of it and goes up the inside of one of the TCR cars, and that is Kochendorfer and Klug. Specifically, it is Max Kochendorfer at the wheel right now, as car number 26 is in third place in the TCR sequential standings. It has been a bit of a difficult weekend for our TCR sequential championship leading car number 2 of Sinan Çiftçi and Vedat Ali Dalokai. They had taken both stage wins as well as the overall victory in Vallelunga, but they weren't as strong this weekend, at least so far, which is definitely a shame, of course, for them, but this will probably reignite the championship fight once more, which is always very nice to see, especially for the reigning champions Salvatore Tavano and Alex Calvini, who had to retire in the opening stage of the year in Vallelunga after a collision that put them out of contention. And here they are with the grey, orange and black Wimmenwerk Motorsport Cupra. So far reigning supreme this weekend, having topped all sessions from free practice 1 all the way up to the end of the first stage. Meanwhile, the PCR, the SG entries are still very close to one another in the fight for the lead, and in between the two brothers in arms Cupras, the Audi Gen 1 of Kalpakloglu and Göktaş leading the class standings, of course, but also in that particular fight. And behind them, Christian Carinci is slowly creeping up to the back of them, as car number 11 has cut the gap from 3.9 seconds around 15 minutes ago to 1.1 seconds now, as we are very close to entering the pit window and seeing the first few pit stops. Of course, drivers need to take a mandatory stop, having to respect the minimum pit time. If a car has elected to sign up 2 drivers, there is a mandatory driver change. That is the case for everyone apart from Cornelia Kutzka, as she is racing on her own since the opening round of the season 2 months ago. And then for TCR European Endurance, there's a minimum of 2 tires having to be changed, and we saw teams fitting in new front tires, have a bit more traction, a bit more grip throughout the entire second half of the stage. Whereas for the GTC Endurance Challenge, this requirement is nowhere to be found, and therefore they are free to continue as they are. You can see that the Gen 1 entry of Kappakloglu and Göktaş is a bit quicker than the Cupra in the twistier section of the circuit that brings the cars from turn number 4 all the way up to turn 12. Currently into turn number 7 now, at the halfway mark of the circuit, a 5.9 kilometer track that was on the TCR European Endurance calendar last year as well. And of course, this being the debut season for GTC Endurance Challenge, it is the first time that the series has visited Slovakia, but has already created plenty of memorable moments. We now have less than 30 minutes to go, which means that we are getting ready to see and witness the first few pit stops. We'll be seeing who dives in first. I'm expecting, for example, the number 11 Audi of Palanti and Carinci to pit quite soon, as Palanti had tremendous pace yesterday. We'll see also if the others come in, and that is exactly it. The number 11 is in together with the number 8 of Dario Caso and also the number 3 of Kappakloglu and Göktaş. We'll see whether or not we can have a look at the pit stops. Yes, we can, and that is the Brothers in Arms team getting ready to pit. New tires on the front. As you can see, the wheel nuts being taken out of the rims. Same can be said in the picture-in-picture screen with the RS3 Gen 1 Audi of Berk, Kappakloglu and Göktaş, leaders of the Gen 1 standings. Having a look at who is pitting as well up front. So far, these three are only ones who are in the pits. Palanti and Carinci, in fact, are still in their pit box, changing tires and drivers. You can see the hard work of Brothers in Arms, the team that has surprised everyone basically in Vallelunga, taking a 1-2 in the race, in their home race actually, given that Roman racetrack is very near to their base. Now in the Slovakian weekend, they're also excelling, especially with car number 8 this weekend, as Caso and Locatelli were second in class yesterday and were second today as well. The Cupra number 8 is ready to go once more, as Dario Caso watches on, still in his suit, as Michele Locatelli is now being strapped in. He is now free to go, just in front of the Audi from Texaco Team AMS as well, and that means that there was an overtake in the pits. Speaking of pit lane, plenty of other cars are pitting in, and that is, for example, the Racing Animals by GT Sport Audi, and that was to be expected given how quick Volobuyev was yesterday. He is about to jump in the car, of course, in the quest of taking a maiden podium in the overall results. They were third yesterday, and will be looking to repeat that, if not improve it, in the next few minutes, 26 to be exact. Lema Racing was also in the pit lane, as we saw. Here they are. As always, perfect work by the TV crew, as Antonucci and Mancinelli are in with car number 39. And so is Brandon Kutsk, as you can see it, with the girl from Lema Racing getting ready to go on once more. Of course, she is racing on her own, and therefore it means that she has to do the entire 55 minutes by herself. Of course, the team has to respect the minimum pit time anyways, therefore they can't have a shorter pit stop because of that. Meanwhile, the leading BMW of Gavazza is still out on track. We can see the Audi of Racing Animals being released as well, with Serhii Volobuyev behind the wheel. He will be going out of his way to try and bring his car back to the pits. Meanwhile, we have the Porsche of Jakob Trost and the Audi of Alessandro Berton in the pits. Here is car number 39, the championship leading GTC AM entry of Antonucci and Mancinelli, as they approach the driver change, one wishing good luck to the other and potentially giving a couple of tips to his teammate, who is now getting strapped in. Of course, after the pit window, we will be giving you a rundown of what happened during it, standings wise, as now Lemma Racing also checks the front splitter, cleaning it so that they can have a better drag resistance. Meanwhile, their teammate Cornelia Kutska is already out in her outlap, currently in 4th position in the GTC AM standings, as now the team is working very hard to respect that minimum pit time. We're also waiting to see the top GTC Pro-Am entries entering the pit lane. As we now see the Porsche of Jakob Trost stopped on the pit box for Wimmerbeck Motorsport. Meanwhile, we see that the Auto Orlando Porsche was in the pits as well, together with the Alpine and the Aston Martin. So plenty of cars were in. I think we're just missing 3 now, which are the BMW from Nardini and Gavazza, the race leaders in the Pro-Am standings, as well as Scalvini and Tavano and Serratore and Argenti. Speaking of Scalvini and Tavano, they are in right about now with the TCR sequential class. Same goes for the race leaders, Nardini and Gavazza. The latter now stepping out of the car and the former stepping in. Nardini will have the one and only job to keep the car on the road and in front of the Porsche from Auto Orlando to secure what would be his 2nd consecutive win in the GTC Pro-Am standings. As you can see, Casas Motorsport checking everything, trying to cool the temperature on the radiator as well on the front bumper. Nardini getting strapped in, aided by the team. And the number 65 crew has done a massive job throughout this entire weekend. It wasn't easy to back that perfect performance from Vallelunga. Therefore, it was amazing to see them this quick once more. Meanwhile, we can also see the other cars in. We have the Tudor Motorsport Audi from 4th position in the TCR DSG standings after they had an unplanned pit stop at the start of this race. And now we can see the BMW from Nardini and Gavazza coming out of the pit stops. Let's see if they are still in the lead or if Visdomini and Camiloglu have made any sorts of inroads. We will see so in just a few seconds, as now the BMW reappears on the racetrack, and they are indeed still in front, as Visdomini and the Camiloglu are now approaching the start-finish line, and therefore still the BMW is in the lead. We will be seeing how the different standings have been reshaped after being in the pits. Meanwhile, we have the Porsche of Wimmerbeck Motorsport, who had suffered a puncture on the rear left tire before coming in. You can see the damage on the rear left as well, made by the punctured tire a bit earlier. Virata Ridalokai in the TCR all-black entry for Texaco Team AMS, taking over now track position-wise. Of course, they're part of two different, not just classes, but championships overall, and therefore they won't fight against one another, with Hans-Peter Eder now in the Porsche. He is currently fighting for what is 4th position in the GTC AM standings. Unfortunately for him, he was, together with his teammate, up in the top 2, but then with the puncture they lost plenty of time entering the pit lane, which is why they dropped all the way down to 5th. So after the pit stops, and with just 20 minutes to go, Nardili and Gavazza are still in the lead. The gap over Visdomini and Kamiloglu is 8.4 seconds, so Nardili just has to defend long and hard against Adriano Visdomini. In the GTC AM standings, Damante and Macari are still in the lead, with Antonucci and Mancinelli in 2nd and Yeremenko Volobuyev in 3rd. In the TCR European Endurance, on the other hand, the sequential class is being led by Scalvini and Tabano, with a healthy 12-second lead over Lisi and Berton, with then Cifce and Dalokai fighting over 4th position. And last but not least, the TCR DSG standings see Caso and Locatelli up front. After their early pit stop, they were able to overtake Serratore and Carinci. So far so good for the number 11 Casas Motorsport entry. On the other hand, as Palante and Carinci are still in within range to secure the win in the overall standings, but we'll talk about that a bit further on. We can see now a fight in the GTC standings. Antonucci and Mancinelli moving in front of Thiago Pinto Bastos, who is still in 3rd in the GTC Pro-Am standings. The Aston gained so much time in the first stint thanks to Pedro Ibrahim's heroics. He was exceptionally quick in the first stint, but we expected nothing less from one of the best Brazilian talents out there, who was joined this season, the maiden voyage of GTC Endurance Challenge, as the 2 series promoted by Riza International have embarked on this journey together, sharing all 4 rounds on the calendar. We were in Vallelunga 2 months ago. We're here at the Slovakiaring now, having the time of our lives, as is to the motorsport with its 2 cars. The first one out on track, the Alpine in the GTC Endurance Challenge, and the other one in the TCR DSG standings. Speaking of the calendar, we will be then having a bit of a summer break between here and Valencia, but we'll go to the Circuito Ricardo Tormo at the tail end of September, before coming back to Italy for round number 4 in Misano for a spectacular night race on the 15th of November to round out the 3rd season of TCR European Endurance and the maiden one of GTC Endurance Challenge. It's been a tale of 2 stories for the motorsport this weekend. Pezza and Verrocchio in the DSG Audi have suffered some issues today as well. As you can see, they have some damage on the front end and a broken headlight ever since Friday. But they are still going strong in 4th position in class. Meanwhile, on the other hand, it's been a near perfect weekend for Damante and Macari in the GTC AM class Alpine. He has done a fantastic work. They were quite unlucky, I have to say, in Vallelunga. They were fighting for the class win in stage number 2 when an ill-timed safety car made them lose every chance of fighting for the win, though they were still able to finish on the overall GTC AM podium for the race, and that was exactly the kind of motivation they needed for this weekend, and they are going out of the way to secure this race win after doing so in the first stage yesterday. Having a look at the gaps, it looks like Davide Nardilli is doing everything but slowing down, as he has grown his lead over Adriano Visdomini to 11.1 seconds. It has been a much more dominant display today compared to yesterday in the GTC Pro Am standings, with the BMW from Casas Motorsport being very quick, whereas the Cayman Porsche of Visdomini and Camiloglu seems to have settled for second position. Speaking of Porsche, we see the other Cayman, this time in the GTC AM standings, driven by Hans-Peter Eder, currently in 5th in the GTC AM standings. Speaking of this class, here are Racing Animals, our newcomers for this weekend. We're very happy to have the all-Ukrainian pair of Ivan Yeremenko and Serhiy Bolubiev out on track today. Bolubiev is now in the car and has been very quick throughout this entire weekend. I think, however, that the Audi is trying to navigate some issues, because it has lost over 10 seconds in the previous lap and now sees Hans-Peter Eder coming back at them. So maybe a couple of not so perfect things for the R8 today. Yesterday they were much quicker than this, and as you can see, yeah, there's definitely some issues with the Audi, as now Hans-Peter Eder moves in front and away from the Audi. It's such a shame for Racing Animals. They were fighting for the overall race podium in the GTC AM standings, and now it looks very hard to secure that, at least for now. Well, at least in this particular moment, it looks like Lemma Racing is smiling more than what they were used to this weekend, as Cornelio Irkutsk has also moved into 3rd position in that standings. Whereas now we see the TCR European Endurance cars, of course, part of 2 different classes. Kochendorfer and Klug being part of the sequential class from this weekend onwards, racing with the Cupra Leon for Wimmerbeck Motorsport with a sequential gearbox. On the other hand, it is Pezza and Verrocchio who are unfortunately in last place. After their issues early on, they had an unplanned pit stop that put them out of contention in the TCR DSG category. What we're now seeing, however, is Wimmerbeck Motorsport having its 2 cars in the TCR sequential class being very close to one another, as Salvatore Tavano is having to look in his mirrors as well, other than overtaking in front of him the GTC entry of Antonucci and Mancinelli, car number 39, as now Scabiani and Tavano have moved in front of it, and the thing will repeat itself, at least history will, with Kochendorfer and Klug, with the latter in the car right now as he moves to the inside as well. It's been a great stage 2 for Wimmerbeck Motorsport in the TCR sequential class. They were in a 1-2 finish after qualifying, and then of course yesterday taking the win with car number 1. On the other hand, it wasn't the best showing for Kochendorfer and Klug. They were hit with a drive-through penalty for an incorrect starting procedure, though they bounced back to still finish in the top 4 of the TCR sequential class. And today, so far in 2nd position, and looking actually quite racy for what could be a historic stage win, should they be able to overtake Scalvini and Tavano. Though of course we'll see what happens with that, given that Wimmerbeck Motorsport has control potentially over this decision. Scalvini and Tavano being, of course, the prime candidates for the title at the start of the season, and after retirement in Vallelunga they need every point possible and available, as they are doing so this weekend so far. Meanwhile, Emilio Davante looks very racy in these final few moments. He is now glued to the back of Adriano Visdomini in the number 33 Porsche from Auto Orlando. The two are from two different classes. We don't count the overall results, of course, therefore this is not an actual fight, but of course it's really nice to see the two cars this close to one another as Damante almost dives up the inside of Adriano Visdomini. That was very, very close between the two of them, maybe too close for comfort, especially for the Motorsport crew watching over from the pits. They just want their drivers to bring it home as quickly as possible. Damante and Macari, of course, looking for that GTC AM class win. They took winning spoils in stage number 1 after finishing 7 seconds in front of Trosseneder. But given that second and third position from yesterday had issues, today the GTC AM win looks almost in the bag already, though of course we have 10 more minutes of running to go through. The same can be said for the other GTC class, the Pro-Am, with Nardile and Gavazza nurturing their healthy lead over Visdomini and Camiloglu, now up to 16 seconds. Nardile has been on an absolute tear in the past couple of laps. He has gained 1.8 seconds in the previous lap on Visdomini, a 2:16.5 versus a 2:18.3. Looking at the TCR standings, the sequential class seems to have Scalvini and Tavano safely in the lead, at least of the overall results, given that the other Pimenbeck Motorsport entry is very close to the back of their teammates, around a couple of seconds behind. The only standings that are yet to be decided basically are the TCR DSG ones, where Pallanti and Carinci had a 13-second gap over Caso and Locatelli. Now the positions are switched, but Pallanti and Carinci are just 6.8 seconds behind the leading DSG class car and are lapping pretty much with the same pace. Therefore, they are still in the lead of the overall results in that category. It is very nice to see two different GT4 style cars this close to one another. You can see the different philosophy behind the two cars, Porsche and Alpine. And of course, it is nice to see also how the drivers take the corners differently. The Alpine taking a much wider line. Meanwhile, fights going on in the GTC AM standings. That is the battle for fourth in class, with Serhii Volobuyev looking at the inside of Hans-Peter Eder, but having to think again before doing so. It is a shame for the Audi, because it seems as though they have a bit of issues given their lap times as well. They were much quicker yesterday, lapping in the 2-minute 20s today, which is a couple of seconds slower than the cars they were with yesterday. Meanwhile, we saw briefly Cornelio Kucka in the Lemma Racing Mercedes, and meanwhile we have a spin for our championship leaders in TCR sequential, and that is car number 2 with Vedat Ali Dalokai. We had heard a tire noise that wasn't too pleasant in the penultimate corner. They were right behind Cornelio Kucka. And now it will be very interesting to see whether they can actually get going again or not, with 6 minutes to go. And if they weren't able to, this could also be a chance to see the safety car out on track as well, which would of course change a lot of things in the overall classifications, as now Damante gets a move on to try and overtake Visdomini out on track, though of course that isn't a fight for position, and nor will be the one with Salvatore Tavano. However, he dives up the inside of both cars. in right this second, but the safety car, as I was announcing previously, was almost certainly going to come out on track, and that has happened right about now. Unfortunately, the number 2 Audi is beached, and this is a huge turn of events for the championship, as they will drop to 4th position in the sequential class. Of course, they have done enough to be classified at the end of the race, but unfortunately that will be it for them, and possibly for stage number 2 as well, given that we only have 5.5 minutes left. The safety car is now taking the leader of the BMW. With Nardilli and Gavazza, that are set to lose the 16-second lead over the Porsche of Dominic Camiloglu, which would have been a devastating outcome had they finished second yesterday, but thankfully they did clinch the stage 1 win, and therefore they are looking to complete the sweep and win the entire race as well. Well, this will definitely play in the hands of Palanti and Carinci, for example. They were fighting against time to stay as close as possible to Caso and Locatelli, with the latter having tremendous pace today, but it looks like the number 11 Audi will benefit from this safety car period, as it looks to clinch the race win in the TCR DSG standings. On the other hand, it will be just like in stage 1 in the GTC AM class, with Lamante and Macari still in front of the rest of the field, though of course the safety car will potentially change things, as the sum of the times will declare the final race results, which will be then available later on today. And this, unfortunately, the beached Audi with Vedat Ali Dalokai, that was fighting as hard as he could to gain some time over third place Alessandro Lisi in the TCR sequential class. This will of course secure the 1-2 finish for Wimmelberg Motorsport in this second stage. Salvatore Tavana and Eric Scalvini being at the top of that class, and unfortunately for their rivals, they had no issues this time around, and they were able to take home both stage wins as well as the race win. Should of course things stay this way, but I'm pretty confident that the next lap will be the last one, and therefore we will be finishing under safety car conditions, because the recovery vehicles are still in the gravel trap on the outside of turn 13 to recover the stranded Audi RS3. Meanwhile, we'll get a replay of the off, and yeah, we can just see the very final part of the accident, but it looks like he lost it all on his own, unfortunately, as Vedat Ali Dalokai and Sinan Chifchi had to abandon prematurely the race. But we are in fact getting ready to start the very final lap of this race. A bit of an anticlimactic finish, of course, but unfortunately that's how racing goes sometimes. But we still had plenty of fun and battles throughout both stages, given how hard our teams fought throughout it. And you can see now the two cars from the lead of the GTC Pro-Am standings following the safety car. Those are Davide Nardilli and Adriano Visdomini. And this, the reason why we are under safety car conditions and why we will finish the race behind it. A very unfortunate end to Texaco Team AMS and their efforts here in Slovakia after winning in Vallelunga, which is of course rather disappointing for them. They will lose quite some ground in the championship, but you will be able to see the final standings following both TCR European Endurance and GTC Endurance Challenge social media platforms. And as the clock enters into its final minute, we are getting ready to see the end of the race. It will be, in fact, a back-to-back success for Casas Motorsport, as Davide Nardilli and Sebastian Gavazza will take the checkered flag first. They won both stages in Slovakia, just like Nardilli did with Giacomo Maman 2 months ago in Vallelunga. They will be the force to be reckoned with as we go towards the second half of the season. Visdomen and Camiloglu did a great job throughout this weekend, but unfortunately they came up just short as the clock strikes 0 right about now. And we are into the final lap of the race, as we said before. In the GTC AM standings, it will be Damante and Macari who take the stage win as well as the overall race win, and the same goes for Scalvini and Tavano. So 3 back-to-back wins in 3 classes between stages 1 and 2. The only class having 2 different winners in the 2 stages is the TCR DSG category, with Dario Caso and Michele Locatelli ready to take the checkered flag first. But it will be Palanti and Carinci who will win the race, and as the safety car will peel into the pit lane at the end of this lap, we will at least be finishing without it the second race. Again, a bit of an anticlimactic end, but still a very enjoyable time nonetheless. And we come towards the finish line. The checkered flag has been waved, and Davide Nardilli and Sebastian Gavazza are the GTC Pro-Am winners in Slovakia for GTC Endurance Challenge. They take both stage wins as well as the overall race win, and the same can be said in the AM class for Emilio Damante and Eduardo Maccari, who do a phenomenal job to get their maiden win this season. In TCR European Endurance, the reigning champions reign supreme once more as Eric Scalvini and Salvatore Tavano take home the stage 2 victory as well as the overall race win. And in the DSG standings, it is Dario Caso and Michele Locatelli who take home victory in stage number 2. But crucially, it is Paolo Palanti and Cristian Carinci who secure the win in the overall race results after taking the stage 1 victory and finishing second today in stage number 2. It is another sweep, of course, in the Gen 1 standings for the Texaco Team AMS entry of Berk Kapakoglu and Umut Göktaş, as they win stage number 2 as well as the overall race as well. And that is everything from our results. It was a fantastic effort once more for our drivers, with Nardilli and Gavazza taking home the overall win in the GTC Pro-Am. Here are the final standings. They are the winners in GTC Pro-Am. The winners in GTC AM are Damante and Maccari with car number 38. Scalvini and Tavano take the TCR European Endurance sequential win. In the Gen 1 instead we have Kalpakloglu and Göktaş, and then last but definitely not least we have the TCR DSG winners with Palanti and Carinci. And that is everything from us at the Slovakiaring. Thanks for being with us. These are of course the final results of stage number 2. We finished under safety car conditions, but we had plenty of fun throughout the weekend. Thank you for being with us, and see you guys next time in Valencia in September.